Good evening. It's Gordon Causey, as always. And as always, come on up. Candy the Wonder Pup pawing at me for her treat, so we'll get her taken care of. One treat. Okay, should well. Lay down. Lay down. Down. Speak. Speak. There you go. Candy's taken care of. And quick preamble. Always appreciate the thumbs when people give me a thumbs up. Always appreciate the subscriptions and cutting right to the chase. This conflict that's going on in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas. Talking to a number of people, I fully understand that it can be incredibly difficult to wrap your head around. And I find there's a tendency amongst many to simply react on an emotional level, and so it's easy to be heavily influenced by propaganda, and there is propaganda coming from all sides in this conflict. There's pro-Israel propaganda, there is pro-Palestinian propaganda, and both sides will say, but my propaganda is based on facts. And typically it resonates at an emotional level. I find this particularly the case with the Palestinian cause. The images and the videos emanating from the Gaza Strip and the devastation happening there, the human misery. I don't dispute for a second that it's real. I also think it is weaponized and propagandized to draw sympathy, to draw public will. This is such an incredibly difficult situation. It is so, the history is just, there's simply too much history. And you don't have to go back to biblical times. You can go back. I tend to, the seeds of the conflict were the major key point in my mind was the signing of the issuance of what is called the Balfour Declaration. And that is the point at which Jews were heartened to find out that at that time in 1917 that at that time Britain was the world's preeminent military and economic power in the world. And they had just issued a declaration saying that they looked favorably upon creating a Jewish nation state in what at that time, when that declaration was issued, the land, the territory was Ottoman territory. It was part of their Syrian district. It was the southern part of the Ottoman Syrian district. And then we fast forward to the end of World War II, but from early in the 1900s and certainly after 1917, leading and right up to the nation state of Israel declaring itself unilaterally independent on May 14th, 1948. In that window of time, there was conflict going on between Arabs and Jews. They were fighting it out amongst each other because there was, I've mentioned this in previous videos, there was no longer a stable political body administering like the Ottomans had done for 400 to 500 years. Now there was a transitory power administering the area in the form of the British Isles and Great Britain. They were administering it. However, they were not interested in being there in perpetuity like the Ottomans had been. They were looking towards handing it off. They'd already handed off a portion in 1921 actually. In 1921, they took a large chunk, the largest part of the mandate for Palestine, and they created a nation state that was given the name Transjordan. It could have been called Palestine, but They chose the name Transjordan. There's a history involved in that in of itself. But I've titled this video, I'm going to break this down into something incredibly simple. And there's a danger in doing that. People will criticize when you try and take something as complex as this conflict, and you try and redact it down into something incredibly simple. People go, oh, that's an oversimplification. And guilty as charged. It is an oversimplification, but I do think this can help individuals to somewhat wrap their heads around it. If you haven't seen the movie The Godfather, well, you're going to be behind. It's one of the greatest movies of all time, in my estimation. Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, Bobby Duvall, James Caan, and on and on. Incredible cast, incredible movie that I did not watch until I was 40 years of age because I thought it was just going to be a gangland violence type of movie. I didn't realize how intricate the plot was. And I never watched it until I was 40. But at any rate, in the movie The Godfather, the city of New York, there are a number of crime families. In the movie, they constantly refer to the 5 families. And I think there are either 5 or 6 criminal families, mafia organizations. The Corleone family is one. The Barzini family is another. The Tattaglia family is another. And I forget the names of the other ones. But those 3 right there are the primary players, and the Corleone family is the top of the heap. They are the most powerful and the wealthiest. And what happens in the movie is that you don't find out until later that it's the Barzini family that is manipulating things behind the scenes in an effort to take down the Corleone family. Barzini is the head of his family, and you get a hint of it. You get a hint of Barzini's disdain. He's a bit of a bit character. I don't think you hardly ever hear him talk in the movie, but his body language and the way that Francis Ford Coppola filmed it, you get this disdain and this. You can see that Barzini wants to usurp, wants to take the place of the Corleone family, but he doesn't go at them directly. Instead, what he does is he uses another family, the Tattaglia family, to go at the Corleone family. And then I have to imagine in my own mind that the other families, these other criminal families, that when a war breaks out, you never know exactly where the chips are going to fall. And the pecking order could, if the Corleone family got knocked out, well, the pecking order could be rearranged. Barzini, his plan is to be at the top. He's using this Tattaglia family. And I look upon the conflict in the Middle East right now, and I look at Israel and its unique status within the Middle East. Israel is the top dog. They have the strongest economy in the Middle East. They don't have the largest economy in the region. That belongs to Saudi Arabia. However, and it's roughly double. The size of the Saudi Arabian economy is roughly double that of Israel. But then look at the population sizes. Israel is not even 10 million people. Saudi Arabia is 35 million, give or take. So it's a country, Saudi Arabia is 3.5 times the size. And yet, here is a little tiny speck of a nation, Israel, with no oil resources, unlike Iran has oil, Iraq has oil, Saudi has oil. States like Qatar refine the oil. The Israelis have no oil industry to speak of. They have the highest per capita income, aside from maybe Qatar, which is a very small, I think it's 2 or 3 million people at most. And that's a nation, I believe, that refines the oil. And tiny little dot, very wealthy, and their per capita income is high, I think, just by virtue of their incredibly small population. But I mean, as I say, this analogy doesn't work perfectly, but I think it works reasonably well. And so what you have is who's the Barzini in this scenario, in this analogy? It's Iran. Iran is a country of in and around 90 to 100 million, somewhere right around 100 million people. Iran is formerly Persia, the Persian Empire, and especially the Ayatollahs in Iran, they view themselves as somewhat of the caretakers of the Islamic world. They want to export their brand of fundamentalist, extremist Shia Islam to the rest of the Arab world. But Israel is a thorn in the side of Iran. Iran to this day does not recognize Israel's right to exist. They did all the way back in 1948 when Israel declared its independence. Iran was one of the first Arab states. It's not really Arab, it's Persian, but call it what you will. They were one of the first to recognize Israel, but that was back when the Iranians were a proxy state, were in the U.S. sphere of influence incredibly. And then in 1979, they had what's called their Islamic Revolution. And ever since then, Iran has been very anti-Israel, obviously, very anti-American. And a lot of people make, in the movie The Godfather, part of the reason for the Corleone's family status as being the top dogs in the criminal world in New York City is because Don Corleone, there's a line in the movie, he carries around politicians like so many nickels and dimes. He has a lot of friends in high political places. Israel has a big friend in the United States of America. They're kind of the removed power who backs up Israel. Now, interestingly, in this analogy that I'm making, some might say, well, you're equating Israel to being a crime family. Well, in this analogy, the entire Middle East, it's just differing crime families. And when you look at world politics at the highest levels, the idea of an altruistic, perfect, good state, a Camelot, forget it. And so I think it helps to look at it in that sense. And like Barzini in The Godfather, rather than going at Israel directly, instead they're using a proxy. In the movie The Godfather, the Barzini family allies itself and gets the Tattaglia family to do its dirty work and gets to hide behind the curtain. Well, hiding behind the curtain on everything going on right now in Israel with Hamas in Gaza, with Islamic Jihad and other groups. Hamas is not the only militant group in Gaza or in the West Bank. There's the Palestinian Authority, viewed by many to be more moderate. This Mahmoud Abbas, who's their leader. He's like 88 years of age. Then you have Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon. Then you have the Houthis, which are down in Yemen. And basically, Israel, in a fashion, is facing a three-pronged attack. They're being attacked. They're at war with Hamas in Gaza. They're at war, lower level conflict with Hezbollah up in Lebanon, which I think is far more potent a force than Hamas. And then you have the Houthis in Yemen, and they are now threatening the shipping lanes along the in the Red Sea along their coastline. And now we have ships like Merck. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it. It's one of the world's largest shipping companies. They are now avoiding the Red Sea, and rather than transiting, through the Mediterranean, down through the Red Sea and into the Indian Ocean, now they're going all the way around Africa and adding weeks and millions of dollars to shipping costs, which is going to threaten world trade and world economies and world supply chains. This is so incredibly complex. But I think what Iran is doing is they are trying to undermine and ultimately knock off the nation state of Israel. That's, I think you have to be living under a rock not to be aware of the fact that Iran's rhetoric is all about eliminating Israel, wiping it off the map and replacing it with a Palestinian state. And I think that's a large part of the reason why no Arab state is willing to accept Palestinian refugees. I think there are a number of reasons. I think that's one of them. I think another part of the reason is that the Palestinian population as a whole, as a group, are seen as incredibly problematic for nation states like Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, because what happens, the Palestinians under Yasser Arafat, when it was the PLO, was the primary political arm of the Palestinian people. They were headquartered in Jordan, in Amman, Jordan, and then they were kicked out because the PLO basically tried to overthrow the Jordanian regime. And so the Palestinians are seen as somewhat, they're useful in the sense that they can undermine the nation state of Israel. And you have Iran supporting Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and groups in Syria as well, and all with an eye to wiping Israel off the map. But Iran it's geographically removed. It gets to its primary enemy is Israel, and primary enemies are Israel and the United States of America. And they're not going to go at the United States, and they're not even going to go at Israel, not directly. But I think their hope is to, and this is what happened in the Godfather film, is that ultimately there ended up being a war between all the five families, between the Corleones and all the other criminal families. They all went to war with each other. And at the end of that movie, it was the Corleone family that stayed on top. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm sorry, but I spoiled it for you because that's the end of the movie. Michael, the youngest son of Don Corleone, takes over control of the Corleone family. He becomes the Don, and then all the heads of all the other families are murdered. Barzini, Stracci, Tattaglia. He names them all. The only names I remember are Stracci, Tattaglia, and Barzini, all gone. But, that's the movies. What happens in the real world if, and I haven't mentioned this for a while, but I mentioned it at the beginning when this conflict first started, is how Iran backs these groups. I didn't even have the Houthis in Yemen on my radar back then. And goodness knows there are probably other groups that aren't on my radar right now. But this has very much the potential to blow up into something bigger. And if Israel ends up at war, right now in Gaza, it's asymmetrical war. They're fighting against an enemy that embeds itself in civilian populations, that is estimated to have a 500-kilometer long network, intertwining network, different levels of tunnels that are buried underneath civilian architecture, schools, hospitals. How do you fight a war like that? How do you fight an enemy that runs underground into a network of tunnels that they've spent 10, 15 years? They've been there since 2007. I think that's the year that Hamas took control. So it's 15 plus years. They've been building this network of tunnels, and they can just go to ground, and Israel is faced with the prospect of sending its soldiers into a tunnel network that they don't know, that the enemy knows intimately. It's been dubbed the Gaza Metro, the Gaza subway system. Different levels, different offshoots, command centers, weapons storage, sleeping quarters, and how much intelligence have the Israelis been able to garner on it? I'm sure there are sections of that tunnel network that they do not know. But ultimately what I see happening is, I think Iran is trying to manipulate other nations and other groups into undermining Israel's security, in hopes that it will spill over into a broader conflict, and that then, after, as Israel gets weakened, you have the United States, their biggest ally, that's trying to support Ukraine, trying to support Israel. Goodness knows all we need now is for China to invade Taiwan. I think 2024 is going to be the year of war, but I won't drone on too much longer. I don't know how fitting you think the analogy is. I think it works to a certain level. Obviously, one's a movie, and what's happening in Israel, between Israel and Hamas right now, and Hezbollah and the Houthis and all this, it's far more complex. But I don't think enough focus is being, certainly not by the media. The media doesn't pay enough attention to what's happening in Iran. In Iran, there's long been a desire in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, in the Middle East, for there to be, to unify the Islamic world. Nasser tried it, Arab nationalism. The Saudis, there's an element within their population that would like to have a pan-Islamic Middle East. Iran, I think their goal is global. I think they want all Muslims under their brand of extremist Shia Muslim. If you don't know the distinction, Shia Muslims hold to this idea that it's blood descendants of Muhammad, blood relations of Muhammad, who are the leaders of the Islamic faith, and they claim blood lineage, whereas Sunni Muslims do not hold to that view. And it's my understanding that the majority of the Islamic world is Sunni, and Shia is the minority. However, Iran is a majority Shia nation. Saudi Arabia, majority Sunni. The Palestinians overwhelmingly are majority Sunni. It's similar in a fashion to Catholics and Protestants. Both hold Jesus Christ to be Lord and Savior. However, the Roman Catholic Church claims apostolic authority. They think that because I don't understand how they do it. I'm not Roman Catholic. We'll delve into religion, but they killed Peter, and then later they claimed Peter as their first bishop, the guy they killed. I don't fully understand the Catholic point of view. I hold to the 5 solas, but that's a topic for another video. Keep it under half an hour. Thank you for watching. Again, like, shares, subscribe, so you know the whole drill. Always appreciated, and I love the comments. And I do try and respond to them all. So I'll leave you with that. If you can think of any other comparisons along this, any other parallels between The Godfather and what's happening in the Middle East that I missed, let me know. And if you want to complain that it's a very trite and very poor analogy, you're welcome to do that as well. I realize it does have its limitations. So good night. Thanks for watching. God bless.